Hello and welcome back to another episode of Critical Reactions with your host, Bryan. We're going to continue on with this week's theme of sonic apocalypse, songs that sound apocalyptic or are lyrically about apocalypses or end times or anything like that. We're going to be checking out some Neurosis today through Silver and Blood. Let's dive into this and see what Neurosis is bringing to the table today. Nice spatialness on the toms here. Just a slow build up here, feeling like something just slowly creeping across the lands. Once again, I love the spatiality of the drums. It sounds great. Big meaty sound, lots of compression on the drums here. Yeah, so it's a typical 8-bar phrase. It's just an interesting phrasing around bars 4 and 5. The vocals are very quiet, stuffed into the mix. musically, we're still very similar to how we started this. Interesting textures in that last section. Also to pull back that wall and create something that feels more spacious here. Interesting glitch on this side. And by glitch, it just sounds like a kill switch on a guitar, but... Six beat bars here. Back to the 8-beat phrases. A lot of these guitar riffs are on the shorter side, just 1 to 2 bars each. Oh, I thought that was metric mod, but it's actually retardando. So those accents that jump the gun a little bit, that one right there, it actually comes in a half beat early, but it doesn't change the time signature at all. We're still in 4/4. Is this it? Okay, that's kind of cool. Okay. For a song this long, there's really not a lot to talk about, but I don't think this is going to be a short video either. There's still plenty of interesting little nuances going on, even if the general element of the song is rather repetitious. Now, a majority of this song is very tom drum led, and this actually sounds really great. It gives it this very earthy, rooted feeling. It's always progressing forward. The toms are consistently playing something close to eighth notes, usually maybe a little bit of variation within that, but eighth notes. It keeps this driving momentum. We saw this even at the beginning. It's not super fast where it feels like a sprint, but it isn't super slow either where it feels like it's dragging its feet to progress. It's just a nice, steady, consistent pace. And we do have the nice panning going on, the spatiality of the drums that I appreciated from start to finish. I thought that was great. But the drums really keep this song pushing forward. Keeps that momentum. I don't know where it's going usually, but it is certainly going somewhere. The bass follows along with this, once again, still pushing forward, consistency of rhythm, giving us a little bit of harmonic information, but really it's the guitars that present the lick, the riff. Each section has a riff that it plays, usually a shorter idea looped over and over and over and over again. These sections last for minutes at a time, and you really gotta love what's going on because that's kind of it. They create this atmosphere between the drums and the guitar. I didn't really love what was going on most of the time. I found this to be kind of a boring song on the surface of it. Many of the sections were neat when they started, but not neat 3 and 4 minutes later. And to me, that's more of a pacing longevity thing, more so than bad writing. The licks themselves, the atmosphere themselves, these are all great. I just don't think they were strong enough to support the extended amount of time we resided within them. But the guitar tones, big, meaty, lots of compression. It definitely fits this sort of war sound that the drums have going on. This forward momentum as well makes it feel like this massive force just sweeping across the land. Consistent pace, unstoppable, unyielding. They do a great job at capturing that. And to be fair to the length of this track, I think that this element of unyielding, of never stopping, it works because of the length. If it were shorter, this would feel like a small trek, but it isn't. It makes it feel like this is just an inevitable thing, whatever's happening. And it's interesting too when I think about that feeling because it pairs well with um, Have a Nice Life that we checked out recently about these golems that just went across the land and destroyed it. They couldn't be stopped, they couldn't be killed. They had only one directive, it's what they did. Just this unyielding, slow force of destruction. I kind of have much of that same feeling here. I think they do a great job of crafting that sound that to me represents, a force you can't stop. Slowly moving, but destructive, large, vast, powerful. We have the vocals in here too, and how many vocalists are there? I counted probably 4 different combinations of timbres, but maybe only 2 vocalists. But we had variations of harshes in here too, and combining different types of harshes. And I heard 2 distinct voices, at least, even through the harshes, elements of the production of the vocal style that just sounded different than another person. So I'm going to say there are at least 2 people here. I think that's kind of neat. It creates a little bit of variation because the vocal styles themselves are pretty static. There is a yell, there is a scream, there's a bit of like a lower grunt, maybe. It's not quite a growl, but it's definitely not sung either. And I think there might have been another one in there that I picked up. Regardless, by themselves, they're pretty static. They have the sound they make, and you just kind of stick with it. But when we bounce between them and layer them up in different ways, too, we create a bunch of different vocal sounds, vocal texture stacks throughout, and it allows the vocals to have ebb and flow to them in a sense of a hocket, basically, of having multiple voices and textures playing different parts of the larger piece of music. I think it ends up working rather well. It at least kept me a bit more interested than if it were just one type of growl done the entire time. It's the bouncing around of it that creates some melodic flow to the song that wouldn't have been there otherwise. So I do appreciate that, but there is a certain point in the song where it all just becomes shouting. Some of the variability gets lost a little bit. I think it was towards the end in that final section that just kept going on and on and on. And we kind of lost that sonic variation in the vocal work. And that's when I started to realize just how long the song was starting to feel. So the hocket of vocal techniques that we saw at the beginning of the track, or I guess the middle of the track, because the intro is pretty long, it did a lot of work in keeping me consistently interested in what the song was doing despite the repetition in the music underneath. But here's the thing that I think really stands out to me on this track, and what elevates it beyond just another post-metal song, which I know is kind of mean, I think, to say. I try to be more critical here, but anyways, it's the glitch elements, it's the sonic noise, it's using guitars in eclectic ways. I don't think any of the noises going on in here are electronic in any fashion. I think they're all done with the guitar, and what really stood out to me, I think, was at the very end of the song, when we had what was clearly a guitar riff with all sorts of squeaks and squeals and distortion and destruction put on it. You could hear that there's somebody here strumming along a chord progression or a little melody or something, but what was coming out of the amp was noise. you can sort of hear pitched movement through it, but that's not the key element of what was, the end result of this. And that really solidified it to me that, these people are creating all of these textures, these ornamental ideas, these glitched out, cutting in and out of the sound, which I still think was a kill switch on the guitar, but might have been something else too. I don't know. They're creating all of these different ideas with the guitar. This is something that I think if it came out, actually, when did this come out? 96. If this came out today, if someone attempted to do this today, it would 100% be done in post with the producer, usually. And I think it's really interesting and clever to be doing it here, presumably live with pedals and switches and knobs and dials on your instrument, on your effects board, um, and being able to make all of this as you go. There's certainly still artists who do this. I just think that it's less prevalent today than it might have been in the 90s, to do it by hand live. And I think it's pretty cool to see this. It does create some very interesting, unique textures throughout this song that elevates it into something that sounds destructive. I don't know if apocalyptic is necessarily where my mind goes, but there's still a destructive element to it. It's noisy, it's abrasive, it's cut in and out. There's all sorts of sonic destruction to it and sonic manipulation to it. As I mentioned there at the end, that final result that comes out of the amp is very little like what is actually being played on the guitar. There's so much modification of that sound across all of the effects pedals before it comes out of that amp. And it certainly adds to the atmosphere of this track. If the core of the song is this force just, slowly getting its way across the land, these elements, this textural stuff that sits around it, is the destruction that it causes. It's what sells the idea of this being a destructive force and not a creative force. The core part of the song simply tells us that it is vast, unyielding, and consistently moving. It is a big, powerful force, but what is it doing? And that's what all of the extra textural, ornamental stuff on the outskirts of the song is telling us. Also, probably the yelling and screaming. I mean, that's usually not used for a positive effect. That's usually an extremity of, well, in this case, it sounds angry. Maybe that's just me, but the vocals do not sound kind or friendly. Or, I guess in another way, they don't sound happy or joyous either. And so that also adds to the storytelling of all this. And like I said, though, if there's one major thing I have an issue with, it's the pacing, it's the length. It works artistically. I think it really helps sell the idea of just how far this force goes and how unrelenting it is. But I did not find I enjoyed this, and particularly minutes like 7 to 11 or something like that, that really repetitive moment there. We had a little less of the guitar noises on the outskirts. The vocals had less variation, and we were down to like a 1 bar phrase on the guitar, and it was just the same thing over and over. And this really sells the infinitum of this event. I think they're doing a great job at crafting this feeling, once again, of unrelentingness, but also maybe unendingness too. Again, artistically, thematically, very cool stuff. But dang, dude, it was not engaging for me at all. This is one of those things I think you really have to get into emotionally, but even then, I think it might be a bit too repetitive for me, even casually, which is, I mean, that's saying something. They're going to some extents here. And that might be something else to praise for them. Really pushing the limits of this and creating something that feels like this through the length, through the repetition, despite the fact knowing that it's going to be less palatable. And of course, there's going to be people who don't find it less palatable too. So there's always that. Let me hit some lyrics on this, see what's going on, and then we're going to wrap this video up. Alright, this song appears to be about war in some way or another, talking about through silver in blood we stand, judged not by the eyes of flesh. So we are going to, do some things that we're going to be judged by gods for, because man cannot understand what we are doing, why we are doing it. It says, pray vision is consumed, let it roam in the flay of flesh around. The second verse is just an expansion of a single idea. Windstorm promised the teeth, bleed alone. I have no idea what that means. But there is the chorus, which says, bleeding one, bleed alone. Breeding love, our flesh was bleeding time. And I don't quite get this, but there is the focus on blood that's present in multiple verses. It's present in the chorus. The bridge, where the song dipped down for just a second before heading into the penultimate lengthy section, says, strained eyes see glory. Rings end in slow death. So washing your wound, rings end in slow death. The only thing I get out of this, strained eyes see glory, means that those who find that they've come to victory through this battle, they've also been through a lot of stuff. They're strained. This could be a literal physical straining. Maybe it's, days without sleep, but it's also a mental straining. The things that you have seen through the eyes, the deaths, the horrors. You might have found victory, but at what cost? The ending, though, where I mentioned things just got super repetitive, simply states, don't crawl, seek his burn of war. When the fallout comes, he is fire. And this just seems to speak about the inevitability of the destructive elements of war. It's written in an interesting way. I think you really have to read between the lines here. But don't crawl would mean to me, don't do it slowly. It says, seek his burn of war. I don't know who the his is, but the burn of war is the destructive elements of war. Fire sweeps across and burns things. It doesn't really stop either unless it runs out of things to burn or it runs out of oxygen. As long as fire has something to spread to, it will continue. So rush into ensuring that war can continue. It says when the fallout comes, he is fire. And again, I don't know who the he is, but once again, bringing up the concept of fire, of ensuring this can continue to go on. And the cyclicality of these two lines over and over and over, the cyclicality of the music here, I think is supposed to speak about how war is just continuous and how there are some people, maybe, because, it is the first line, a command. Don't crawl, seek his burn of war. It is a command to keep the war going. Maybe it is how some people will benefit from wars, and so they want to keep them continuous. But I don't really see anything else in here that really stands out to me in a way that I understand. It's written in a unique way, and I'm kind of curious what some of these figurative lines are supposed to represent. I mean, coming back to the idea that this is a war track that focuses both on the losses of victory, the losses of losing as well, but also how there are those who just want to continue this cycle of destruction. Kind of focuses on both sides, those in the battlefield and the warmongers who start these wars and keep them going. What is it about bleeding alone, but bleeding as one? and how this leads to breeding love. I don't know. That really stands out to me as a unique stanza amongst everything else, which talks about death and destruction and loss. How do we bring love into this? I don't know. These are my thoughts. Neurosis is Through Silver in Blood. Let me know what you thought of this. If there's anything that stood out to you, anything that you would like to add on to what I said or correct me on, maybe if you have your own thoughts or opinions about this or anything else you would like to add to the conversation, please put all of that in the comment section. Above that, in the description box, you'll find a link to Linktree. Takes you here. You can find links to my music, ways to support the channel, a link to the Discord server, and so much more. Above push the wrong button. Above that, if you could, like, subscribe, and ring the bell. I greatly appreciate all three of those. That wraps it up for today. I'll be back tomorrow, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 9 p.m. UTC as usual. Until next time, remember to be critical, not cynical, of the music you listen to, and have a fantastic morning, afternoon, or evening, whenever you choose to watch my videos.